Before the Renaissance could claim its greatest gift to the world, a block of marble sat abandoned in a quarry for nearly 20 years. No sculptor dared touch it. They said it was cursed, too flawed, too broken. And yet, one man saw something the others could not, divinity waiting to be freed. That man was Michelangelo, and the figure he carved would change art forever. Tonight we walk through the stone halls of the Renaissance master. Every major work, every godlike figure, every moment of divine beauty carved by human hands. From the boy who would face a giant, to the mother who held her son in death, to the chains that bound men in struggle. Michelangelo did not merely carve marble. He awakened souls trapped in stone. We begin not with gods but with youth. The David stands as perhaps the most perfect male form ever sculpted, 17 feet of concentrated purpose. Michelangelo carved him at 26, a figure caught between boyhood and manhood, vulnerability and strength. His hand rests on his hip, his eyes gaze into distance. He is alone before the battle that will define him. But notice the details that haunt us still. His right hand grips a stone, the very weapon he will use against Goliath. His left shoulder is slightly raised, tensed. The veins in his forearms appear to pulse. Michelangelo spent months studying anatomy, dissecting bodies, learning how human skin stretches across bone and sinew. David is not idealized. He is alive. What struck contemporaries most was the impossible realism. Other sculptors created ideals, frozen perfection. Michelangelo created presence. The David seems ready to step down from his pedestal and walk among us. His face shows neither confidence nor fear, but something deeper, resignation to fate. He knows what comes. He walks toward it anyway. The David stands in the Galleria dell'Accademia in Florence, where he has towered since 1504. Millions have stood before him, and nearly all report the same strange sensation, that the stone watches them in return. Michelangelo himself believed that the human form, male and female alike, contained divine spark. Every muscle, every curve was evidence of God's hand. But youth is only the beginning. Michelangelo's true mastery lay in capturing transformation, the moment when innocence collides with sorrow, when strength crumbles beneath weight. This is where the Pietà begins. Picture this. A young mother no more than 20 years old holds the broken body of her son across her lap. He has been tortured, murdered, abandoned by his own disciples. What would most sculptors show? Despair, rage, the agony of loss. But Michelangelo shows something harder to witness: acceptance. Mary's face is almost serene, her eyes closed or looking inward. Her hand rests on her son's limp arm with tenderness that pierces the chest. She has transcended grief. She has become eternal sorrow, the mother who understands that all beautiful things end. The Pietà was carved when Michelangelo was just 23, younger than the boy David. Yet the work breathes maturity, spiritual depth, the understanding of suffering that should take a lifetime to achieve. Some believe he intuited it. Others suggest his genius permitted him to simply know pain without having to experience it. The marble itself seems to weep. Carved from a single block of flawless Carrara marble, the Pietà stands in St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City, protected behind bulletproof glass since 1972. It survived centuries of touching hands, centuries of pilgrims weeping before it, centuries of witnessing faith itself transform into stone. Michelangelo signed his name across Mary's sash, the only work he ever signed. Why did he sign only this work? Perhaps because the Pietà was the truest thing he ever made, the closest he came to capturing the divine itself. Every other sculpture that followed, no matter how magnificent, would be an attempt to match this one perfect moment. And yet he succeeded many times over. The works that followed were not lesser, they were different. Now we turn to power itself. When Pope Julius II summoned Michelangelo to carve a massive statue of himself, the artist carved not a tyrant but a warrior, a figure caught between action and contemplation. The figure bristles with restless energy, one arm raised as if about to command armies. This is power uncertain of itself, power aware of its own fragility. But the most monumental power Michelangelo ever attempted was the unfinished. The Atlas figures, four colossal male nudes emerging from the stone as if being born from captivity itself. Their muscles strain against the marble. Their faces turn away, trapped between freedom and stone. They were meant to support a papal tomb that was never completed. So they remain, prisoners of beauty, eternally struggling to break free. These unfinished works trouble us more than his completed sculptures. We can see his hand still at work, see where he abandoned the stone, see the tool marks where he paused and walked away. Some scholars believe Michelangelo intentionally left them unfinished, that the struggle itself was the point. The figure fighting against his own existence is more beautiful than the figure at rest. The four atlases were carved for the tomb of Julius II, a project that consumed Michelangelo for nearly 40 years. The Pope demanded constant work. The budget grew and shrank. The design changed repeatedly. What emerged was not a tomb but a monument to exhaustion, to the collision between artistic vision and the demands of power. The atlases are Michelangelo himself, carved in stone. Beyond the male form, Michelangelo carved the divine feminine with equal power and care. The Madonna figures appear throughout his work, sometimes as mother, sometimes as symbol of virtue itself. In each, there is a sadness around the eyes, a knowledge of future suffering. The Renaissance believed in divine beauty, but Michelangelo understood divine sorrow was the deeper truth. The Christ figures Michelangelo carved show a body that has endured unbearable pain, ribs visible beneath skin, muscles slack with death, the weight of divinity pulling downward. He carved Christ not as triumphant but as surrendered. The body shows the aftermath of torture. The face shows the cost of redemption. This is not comforting theology. This is the brutal truth of sacrifice. Throughout his 89 years, Michelangelo returned to the same bodies, the same poses, the same eternal struggles. He carved his Sistine Chapel ceiling with over 300 figures, each one anatomically precise, each one a study in human form pushed to perfection. Later, he sculpted the famous bound slaves and victories, figures wrestling with their own existence, their own material form. What separates Michelangelo from all other sculptors is his obsession with anatomy. He dissected corpses to understand musculature. He studied animals to understand movement. He treated marble like living flesh, as if his task was not to create but to reveal what the stone had always contained. Every figure he carved seemed to say, "I was always here." He simply freed us. But here is what haunts us about Michelangelo's work. He believed the human form was divine, yet he seemed to carry deep sadness about that very belief. His figures are beautiful, yes, but they are also lonely. They are caught in moments of struggle, hesitation, sorrow. The David is not triumphant, he is resigned. The Pietà is not anguished, it is accepting. Beauty and sorrow are one thing to Michelangelo. In his final decades, Michelangelo became obsessed with the concept of divine beauty emerging from raw material. He carved the face of Christ dozens of times, each version more abstract, more essential. He moved toward simplicity, away from the detailed anatomical precision of his youth, toward pure form. The marble itself became the message. The stone was enough. Yet even these late works contain the tension that defined his entire career, the battle between form and emptiness, between the human and the divine. Michelangelo lived to be 89, working in marble until nearly his final breath. He never married. He never had children. His only offspring were these sculptures, thousands of figures born from stone, eternally frozen in their private struggles. Michelangelo believed that inside every block of marble lived a perfect form. His task was merely to free it. This philosophy drove him to accept commissions he did not want, to carve marble he deemed inferior, to wrestle with stone that refused to yield the visions in his mind. Some of his greatest works were carved from discarded blocks that other sculptors had abandoned as worthless. In his writings, Michelangelo described the act of carving as a kind of violence, necessary, holy violence. The hammer blow that freed marble was also a blow against the stone's integrity. Every figure emerged at the cost of destruction. Beauty required obliteration of the original block. The sculptor must be willing to destroy in order to create. This is the dark secret of his art. The frescoes of the Sistine Chapel ceiling represent perhaps the most ambitious artistic undertaking in human history. Over 4 years, Michelangelo painted over 300 figures, gods, prophets, ancestors of Christ, across 13,000 square feet of curved ceiling. He worked on scaffolding high above the ground, paint dripping into his face, muscles screaming. The Sistine ceiling is sculpture made horizontal, and yet Michelangelo claimed he was not a painter, he was a sculptor. The ceiling was merely sculpture rendered in pigment. He carved form with color, created dimension through shadow and light, made the flat surface appear to breathe and move. The divine itself seemed to descend from the heavens he had painted. The genius lay in making us believe the impossible was real. But what most visitors to the Sistine Chapel do not understand is that Michelangelo was constantly fighting against the very nature of his materials. Wet plaster that dried too quickly, paint that ran, brushes that failed him. The human body pushed beyond its limits, the vision in his mind that refused to match the reality his hands created. He succeeded by conquering obstacles that would have broken lesser artists. As Michelangelo aged, his work grew darker, more introspective. He carved an unfinished Pietà late in life in which he placed his own face on the figure supporting Christ's body. The artist literally inserted himself into the scene of redemption. He was asking, am I the mourner or the mourned? Am I the witness or the sacrifice? These final works suggest he had begun to see himself as both sculptor and sculpture. What remains when we stand before Michelangelo's sculptures today is the overwhelming presence of genius confronting mortality. Every figure he carved, from the boy David to the suffering Christ, was an argument against death itself. Beauty would endure. Stone would endure. The human form, frozen in marble, would speak across centuries to those who came after. And indeed it does. We cannot help but listen. So we have walked the halls of marble and seen every god, every mother, every victim, every triumph carved by Michelangelo's hand. From the David's stone grip to the Pietà's grief, from the struggling Atlases to the divine ceiling beyond, his genius spoke one eternal truth. The human form contains the infinite. Stone itself can carry eternity. Which Michelangelo work moves you most deeply? Tell us in the comments below and subscribe to walk the next great hall of gods in stone.